Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. There are some deals too good to keep under wraps. Get $15 a month wireless and tell your friends how they can start saving too. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/dark. That's mintmobile.com/dark. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/dark. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional fees, taxes, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
The following program is a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcasts Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com to learn more about this and our other weekly storytelling programs. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the show.
Good evening. I'm storyteller Otis Jiry, and I ain't your grandfather. From where I'm from, we don't do bedtime stories. And if that's what you were expecting, you're in the wrong place. If it's terrifying tales you're after, well then, I've got just the thing. Get comfortable, settle in, turn off the lights, if you dare. Your night is about to get a whole lot darker. Who needs sleep anyway?
Good evening. You're listening to Scary Stories Told in the Dark. Welcome, dear listeners, to Season 15, Episode 16. I'm your host, Otis Jiry, and in this episode, I'll be performing 4 tales to terrify you, courtesy of authors Kyle Harrison, Ron Riekki, and James Allen Momenturo. Tonight we'll hear stories of egregious experiments, haunting hospitals, legendary labyrinths, and awful alleys. You're listening to the standard edition of tonight's program, which contains the first 2 spine-tingling stories. If you'd like to show your support and enjoy an extended version of this and other episodes with twice the terror, visit simplyscarypodcast.com and click Patrons in the upper menu to sign up today. Thank you for your support. Now, let's take a walk together down the moonlit trail. So lock your doors, turn your lights down low, and settle in. The show is about to begin. We seem to have a curiosity about off-putting, the not quite right, the things that are mostly normal, but we can't put our finger on why it's not well at all. Well, part of that is the fear of falling between this world and another, slipping into another place, of worlds between worlds, where everything looks exactly the same until you realize it's not. Tonight, we'll look into some places where our reality bends into someone else's, and whether that someone is happy to meet us. Kyle Harrison brings us to our first tale, in which a student seeks answers and hopes to find them working with a company on the edge of strange technology. Join us, then, as he learns that not every scientific advance occurs without its problems. Without further ado, I present to you Labyrinth of Stars. I, Dr. James Wesley, place this testimony here as a record of the events leading up to the death. No, the genocide of everyone that worked at the corporate offices at Owsit Pharmaceutical found in Washington state. We were told that the work we were doing was going to help people. This started last spring. I got a call from the headmaster at Konkol Academy. I'd been studying medicine there for nearly 3 years and had never once been asked to his office, so the thought of being summoned actually terrified me. Marsh was old as dirt and as stern as a brick wall. He smoked a pipe and wore clothes that looked like they belonged from the 1930s. As I entered his office, he placed a vinyl record on an old player and let classical music fill the air. He told me to close the door and asked me if I was familiar with the piece, to which I admitted I was not. According to him, the music was created by a local cult leader back in the 1880s named Abram Zwan. The headmaster explained that Zwan had managed to convince hundreds in the area to kill themselves due to a meteor shower. If I may ask, why are you telling me this, sir? His bizarre ramblings about ritualistic genocide had left me unnerved, and I wasn't entirely sure what the purpose was of my arrival at his office. He puffed his pipe again and focused his old pale eyes on me before explaining that a rumor had spread across the academy campus that I was involved in extracurricular activities with questionable students. I didn't lie, and I have no intention of concealing the truth from anyone who hears this tale. Full disclosure is necessary in order for guilt and blame to be placed where they belong. When I arrived at Konkol Academy 3 years prior, one of my first interactions with the students was actually near the East Gate. Another student, a senior, had just plummeted from the rampart and smashed their skull all over the courtyard below. Dozens of students and teachers were trying to get a look at the grisly scene. One, in particular, a young medical orderly named Herbert, told me that the student who committed suicide had been involved in strange behavior surrounding a church that sat in the South Courts. I've always had an inquisitive mind, and it bothered me that someone with a bright future ahead of them would toss it all away after a single visit to an old religious institution. So, I traveled there myself. According to others I met during my time here, many believe that the church was not made by human hands. It had an otherworldly feel about it, and people gathered there to express their interest in the unknown. The leader of these congregants was named Thomas Severin, and he greeted me like a sheep to be brought to slaughter. Considering how easily I was roped into this mess, that analogy proves true in more ways than one. Severin explained to me that the land around Konkol Academy was considered sacred by the local people. Of course, the immigrants that settled and took over and built the academic buildings, they had no interest in such superstitions and plundered the land for their own benefit. The church, she claimed, was the only last remnant of the old world. I asked him about the strange rumors surrounding the church and the student who had committed suicide, and he told me that there were star charts that some students studied here in the church that the teachers considered questionable. Apparently, they showed systems that didn't match modern astrology, and therefore they were deemed inferior. The student who had jumped from the wall had somehow learned more about these charts, and that knowledge had caused them to end their life. I told all of this to Headmaster Marsh, explaining that ever since that encounter, I'd dabbled in the esoteric alongside Herbert and Severin. I'd come to theorize that the charts that baffled so many were actually not showing any stars we were familiar with at all, but rather from an age-long past when the skies were still luminous in this area. I also, I admitted to him, believed that the charts were created by visitors from the stars. Saying such things out loud made me feel foolish in front of such a learned man. But to my surprise, he only puffed his pipe and nodded in agreement. I heard you were writing such papers under a pseudonym, trying to see if any of the other teachers in the academy agreed with you. As it turns out, there's a chapter of this school's history that's been covered up, which relates to your own investigations. And that's where the story of Swain comes in. Headmaster Marsh explained to me that the board of directors had agreed to keep the works of Swain under lock and key almost 100 years ago. But over the past few generations, things have been forgotten, and a few of the papers that the cult leader had written were able to leak, and the star charts and the books I'd been studying at the church in secret were actually part of those papers. But are you saying there's truth to the ramblings of a fictional story where he claimed to have seen aliens? I asked. Well, the story, which I can summarize, connected to the meteor shower that Marsh had already told me about. During the late 1880s, Swain said that large monolithic objects fell from the sky all across Dunwich County. We believed those objects were actually from the Earth's moon, and they revealed that these aliens were living amongst us. It had sounded insane when I studied it, but the papers had included detailed descriptions of the aliens and illustrations. The beings looked like massive slugs with thousands of eyes and skin as smooth as silver. Moon beasts, he'd called them, and he claimed that the crash of the monoliths was the first step in their plan for coming to Earth. We had hoped to keep these matters private, but because of your own meddling, we've attracted the interest of a third party, someone that wants to investigate this goose chase, Marsh told me. To my surprise, he told me that this new company wanted to hire me full-time as a medical professional. You understand, of course, this sort of employment would be off the record, and the academy would deny any involvement, Marsh warned. I was still dumbstruck by this sudden turn of events, so I did my best to keep my feet on the ground and recap what was happening. So, a fresh-faced entrepreneur company wants to hire me as a medical professional based off my theories relating to esoteric magic and star charts from ancient cults, I asked, rubbing the back of my neck sheepishly. It all sounded a bit outlandish. That's all I know for now. A Mr. Lang is meant to contact you shortly and give you further details. But I should also advise you that this is not the sort of position you turn down, James. Your papers make the academy look bad. We're doing you a favor by letting it slide and getting you out of our hair, rather than kicking you out onto the streets. I gritted my teeth, trying to think fast as I stood up and looked at this taxidermy trophies. If that's the case, then it would be awful for anyone to realize you were ostracizing me just because I spoke the truth, I countered. Marsh raised a weary eyebrow. He knew I was threatening him. What do you want? All we want is to make this go away. Let Owsett have the headache, he said tiredly. I knew my demands before he even finished speaking. Herbert and Severn, their expertise in these fields exceeds mine, and their insights will be valuable. They'll be joining me for this new assignment, I told him. Marsh promised he would make it so, and so he did. I didn't really pay much attention to the details of our transfer to the small town of St. Malvis. There was a clinic there that was reopened for Owsett a few months back, and that's where I got to meet Lang. He was a tall, dark-haired Asian man with a brutish spirit, and most of that first meeting was a bit of a blur. I was too eager to pay attention and find out what sort of work my colleagues and I would be assigned, especially because I knew it meant some of the theories I'd written about might be true. When I expressed such excitement to Lang, he promptly offered to give me the charts and notes that were connected to the scandal the Academy so vehemently wanted to cover up. The Swain incident, he called it. For posterity, I'll provide a short summary of what we found in those notes before I explain what we did with his knowledge. Despite being a religious zealot, I was surprised by the writings of Abram Zering to find out that he was a learned man, and he studied astrology and philosophy quite avidly. He included quotes from Shintoism and even ancient Mayan texts in his writings, which all centered around the belief that the world we live in is not the only one that exists. In short, Swain saw through the monoliths a secondary realm that exists alongside the one we live and breathe on. The true world, as he called it. Sounded starkly different than the flourishing life of Earth. Swain said on the other side of the mirror, life hardly existed at all. There were long, streaking lines of white and strange tall buildings that defied the architectural standards of our world, corridors and stairwells that spanned whole galaxies and seemed to circle black holes. He theorized that these places were connected somehow to the star charts from the church, and that the church itself was in fact a conduit that held more power in our universe than others. A conduit, he claimed, was the result of the collective memory of the culture around that spot. The longer the collective memory could recall details about the location of the true world that existed there, the longer that location would still exist in our world as well. And this explained why the members of the congregation felt an otherworldly connection. When they saw and prayed in the pews, they were actually sliding in and out of an alternative dimension. We are hoping we can try to learn more about this collective memory that he spoke about. We begin trials tomorrow, Lang explained. I should have had further questions about all of this, but the sheer excitement to be part of a groundbreaking discovery was so overwhelming, I kept them to myself. The next day, we had about a dozen people show up to participate in what Lang called a clinical trial. The drugs we administer here are not FDA approved, of course, so we will be signing waivers and non-disclosure agreements. You'll be paid once the 6-week period has come to an end. In private, he explained to me that each patient would be given a slow drip of psychedelic drugs and other substances that were designed to enhance neurological functions. I began the tests immediately. It took less than 48 hours for one of the subjects to die. I'd like to say that I knew their name, or that I understood why they had died, but I can't say either of those things because I'd be lying. I'd just finished a shift rotation on the other side of the facility when we were working on manufacturing the equipment for the samples when I heard a loud scream from the patient area. My natural instinct was to run and assist. Herbert was holding down his patient as she cried horribly and shook and vomited. After a full recovery, about an hour later, I took the time to obtain a statement. You were given approximately 4 doses before you experienced this unfortunate side effect. Could you describe what caused this or what you feel went wrong? The patient was looking at us like we were strangers, even though we'd been there for a while now. True, we hardly knew each other, but the level of distrust was disheartening. I encouraged openness, especially due to the health benefits. I'm starting to think that might be a lie, she said as she coughed up more blood. Per standard protocol, I urged them to explain what caused their outburst. You'll think I'm crazy, but I saw something slinking in the shadows. It felt like I was back there in those corridors, running from it. The halls never ended, and the strange shadow just kept getting closer. I was soon aghast to discover that 4 other patients had similar experiences, and I'd missed them. That couldn't be a coincidence. When I told Lang about it, his response troubled me even more. Increase their dosages and monitor their brain activity. I want to get a clear picture of what they're seeing the next time they have an episode. Are you suggesting we actively place our patients in harm's way? I asked. We're only letting their mental state be at risk. Their physical body remains here. We have no means of crossing over to the other side, and neither do the creatures they're envisioning, Lang said dismissively. I wasn't so sure that was a solid excuse, but I was obeying orders still and not questioning the methods. I wanted to learn more, and it felt like we were finally making progress. I did as I was told. The results began to trickle in again over the next month. Our patients were sharing the same nightmare. I documented what I could, and I found the notations even more terrifying than I care to admit. The first pair, a man and a woman, reported that the dream consisted of a labyrinth, much like the ancient Grecian mythos. This one seemed to be haunted by beasts that clawed at my patients' minds long after they woke up. The bear. It reeks of death. It haunts us relentlessly. We walked the halls for days trying to find a place to hide, but each path we took, even if it felt like we were going forward, it wound us back around the core of that awful maze. When they described the maze, the third patient said sometimes there were doors and stairs. They did not always appear, but when they did, they would lead to different segments of this starry world. One led to a hotel. The rooms were always empty, but the patients would talk about screams and crying in the empty rooms, something trying to dig its way out from under. They often felt like their feet were heavier when they went inside these rooms, so they marked them as dangerous and avoided them as best they could. Another talked about a forest. I found this framework quite interesting because it seemed to follow the same principles as the hallways. The forest would snag and twist about, circling a lonesome mountain that the patients never seemed able to reach. They would hear distant static that was luring them to the mountain, but the closer they got, the more the massive landmass would remaneuver themselves. Lang called these infinite corridors the key to our knowledge of the true world. He wanted more information and told me to continue to increase the dosages. It all seemed to be progressing well, until the first suicide. It had been almost 3 months since we started these human tests. Most of the people we were using had lost their sanity. Others seemed to have been driven to stay inside the dream world and refuse to wake up. The patient who passed away was actually one of Herbert's, a young man who came to the clinical trial for money to support his family. He was only meant to stay a week. He was given the max dosage to enter the shared consciousness faster, and we documented what he learned via a new method Lang wanted to try, where the dreams were projected onto a screen. The subject, whom I must admit I'd never learned the name of, was immediately thrust into the corridors as soon as the syringe pierced his skin. His readings were similar to those of someone who had fallen from a great height. There were rows of doors in front of him, all marked very similarly with the number 3 on them. He approached the first one and tested it out, swinging it open to see if another corridor that stretched for miles within glowing blue lights on either side. Before he went in, the subject tried the next door and found the exact same thing. Then they tried another door, and another, until they were surrounded by open doors that all seemed to lead to the fiery blue hallway. They reluctantly entered, and I whispered to Herbert about whether he'd ever seen this portion of the alternate dimension before. Well, I've been doing some studying on their mental health as they go into the true world. If I'm not mistaken, the halls and the mazes they find themselves in are of their own making. Each time they're tossed into this labyrinth, they're making new pathways that intersect and grow the maze, he told me. I was fascinated by that theory, but too focused on the feed to provide any sort of insight on what it might mean. There was a single door in front of the subject. This one was already open, and inside there was a slender woman wearing a familiar outfit. That looks like the uniforms from Houset, I commented, trying to get a better look at the woman. She was a redhead with sparkling blue eyes, and I'll admit, even attractive. She was mouthing words we couldn't understand to the subject, and I was trying my best to keep an eye on his physical reaction. Whatever she's saying to him, it's causing quite a spike in his adrenaline, Herbert said as he reached for the device that would take the subject out of the dream. Wait. We need to see what happens. This could help us, I said. I regret pushing things that day. The woman kept talking, the levels kept rising, and then at the end of the speech she'd given to our subject, she took out the syringe. It reminded me of the same one we administered to place them in the dream. She plunged it into the patient's neck, and in that instant they woke. They gasped for air as if they'd been drowning, their gaze confused and fearful as they looked at us. What happened in there, I asked. But they didn't respond. Before they even dared to try and comprehend the situation, the patient jumped from their bed and ran toward a nearby railing. They ran straight past, on the railing, falling to their death without even a scream passing their lips. An autopsy revealed nothing out of the ordinary for their brain function. Lang considered the whole incident just a simple misunderstanding and miscalculation, but I wasn't sure. I kept replaying the footage of the blue-eyed woman in my head over and over. Who was she? Did she work for us? What had she told the subject to make them want to kill themselves? Over the next few weeks, those questions were compounded by even more issues with the patients. Some were refusing treatment, harming themselves to stop the dreams. They just wanted to go home. I felt sorry for them, but Lang insisted their work was hardly finished. We've only scratched the surface of what this maze is, what sort of abilities it can give us. We need more players in this game, James. Can you help us? I knew what he was asking. He wanted me to be a recruiter, and I played that part quite well. I went back to the academy, this time as a representative of the Otis company. Even though the campus had been my home for nearly 2 years, stepping back into it now was overwhelming. I didn't feel very welcome anymore. A few students stopped and saw my badge that represented Otis and made a few hushed comments among themselves. Then they zigzagged around to avoid being near me. I turned, about to ask what they were saying, when someone bumped into me and dropped their coffee on my clothes. "Gah, watch it," I said, jumping back and looking at the young woman. She had curly red hair and freckles and blue eyes. She reminded me of the same woman I'd seen in the visions of our patients. But how is that possible? "Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" she asked as I tried to ignore the burning liquid that covered my shirt. Fine, it's fine. Do I know you?" I said as I helped her gather the paper she dropped. I couldn't help but to notice familiar esoteric symbols and graphs on the paper. Was she a student of Zwain's teachings too? "I don't think so, but you know me now. I'm Emma Carter," she told me as she spotted a logo on my shirt. "You're with the corporation we're contracting with?" she asked in surprise. "You're familiar with us?" Headmaster Marsh made an announcement about a month ago that we had a new internship program happening with the company. But I'll admit that's not the only time I heard about you. Let's just say that there are a few ugly rumors circling about the people that go to work for them, Emmett told me. "Rumors? What kind?" She pointed toward a nearby study lounge, and I followed her to discuss this privately. "You probably know this firsthand, but the people who go to work for you, they never come back and finish their studies. They disappear," she whispered. "I can see it in your eyes. You know it's worse than that," Emma said when I averted my gaze. I thought about some of the things that had happened to the patients I'd tested with. I didn't want to think that we were hurting them, but I couldn't deny it was dangerous. Some of them had already tried to off themselves, and some had been successful. I'd been pushing these things out of my mind, focusing on the endgame for the research. But something about the way this young woman spoke made me pause and realize that I was being a monster. "What is it? What do you know?" Emma asked. "I know that we've been dabbling in scientific discoveries that will shake the very foundation of our entire human race. Alternate dimensions that connect via endless halls." I paused to see if any of this sounded familiar and decided to make a guess about her studies. "It's what Pastor Zwain was researching almost 100 years ago. Am I right?" Emma actually looked surprised I was so forthcoming. "I think I might know something that can help you," she told me. She wrote a time and place for the South Dormitory to meet that very night. A group of us had been getting close to unlocking what Zwain learned all those years ago. Bring your own calculations, and I think we can reach a solid understanding of this alternate dimension. I'll admit, I was stunned she knew so much about the subject. It made me think about what I'd seen in that vision. Was that an alternate reality where Emma had already become a member of Otis? Yet she was transforming my patients into monsters in that nightmarish place, I thought. If I decided to help her and we discovered a way to enter the true world right here on this campus, would it cause the same inevitable reaction for her in the future? Was this what fate was? I didn't have the answers, but the questions troubled me. I felt as though an unseen force was pushing me along. I didn't even feel that my free will was existent, as I realized that the only course forward would be to meet with Emma and the other Swain acolytes. Whatever this power is, it wants us to find it, I decided. The third world was almost within reach, and new information that could reinterpret the entire universe. As a man of science, I felt there could be no other way to go. I checked the map of the campus and where Emma wanted us to meet. The location was obvious. The dark church where all of this started almost 100 years ago. I took a break at the cafeteria and took off my coat to eat a fine lunch. With my logo hidden, none of the students gave me dirty looks, and it was nice to think about my days as a learner here. So much had changed since then. The reflection made me feel guilty because of how I was now using these same students for the experiments at Outset. What had I become? I lost my appetite with that thought and collected my things and went toward the dark church. At this time of day, the ancient structure was empty. Candles were lit throughout from a morning service, and I saw several books lying on the ground around what looked like a magical sigil. I knew better to think this was a mundane act of worship, so I leaned forward to get a better look at the written words. But what I saw made little sense, at least at first. Hirak Gal, Drijkal Al-Kava, Bifel Shrak Vigil A. Hirak Gal, Drijkal Al-Kava, Bifel Shrak Vigil A. Hirak Gal, Drijkal Al-Kava, Bifel Shrak Vigil A. As I kept repeating it in my head, somehow the translation came to me, as if the book was telling me what it was trying to convey. Here the disciple Bifel lies, in sleeping nights he bleeds. Kith Arn Muhul Luns Diska Vipe. Awakens his chaos, lets loose his fury. A pit formed before my eyes. The endless void ripping open to give me a glimpse into eternity. This was the true world. I looked around. I should have been waiting for Emma, but the new portal beckoned for me to investigate. From the shadows I saw light, beautiful and ancient. It swirled and shimmered and shook the room. Immediately the candles fell down on the ground, the fire shaking and transforming as blood and dark slime was emerging from their wax, feeding this nameless monster. Then the walls around me formed reflections of my own self. No longer was I standing in the Carbuncle Academy. No longer was I in the world I knew and loved. This was something else, dark and mysterious. Yet it only spoke to me the truth. As the swirls of anger and blood formed a shape, its unimaginable face became clear to me. And when I saw what the mirror was showing me, I screamed. The reflection shattered into a million pieces, and I realized how foolish we'd been to even step foot into this place. I saw others trapped in the labyrinth, ones that I hadn't met yet. I could only assume they came from other timelines or dimensions, wandering this place and becoming faceless monsters. They could smell my fear. I stepped forward to try and get the attention of one that looked almost human. He'd cut out his own eyes and he was mumbling about like a madman. I cannot see the world that is beyond ours, for it invites death. Every path, every direction, it leads only to our extinction, he whispered as I passed by. The other creatures were feeding on themselves, crawling and making hallways of flesh as I ran through to find Emma, or to find anything that reminded me of the sane reality I came from. I saw her at last, standing like she had in that first vision, with a syringe in her hand, but she wasn't alone this time. The tunnel of flesh fell away, and I was trapped in a white room with no clear dimensions. Carter stood there next to an operation chair, and beside her was an older man, perhaps in his early 90s, who greeted me cordially. "You're the one we have to thank for this new discovery, so I've heard. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Wesley," he said. "How do you know me?" I asked. My voice sounded hoarse. The walls of this place whisper your name often. In almost every iteration of these endless corridors, your name is the one that these beings chant whenever we ask who sent them here. It would seem that the entities that control this corridor have used you and people similar to you in almost every single dimension to keep themselves fed. We were puppets, pulled here by forces beyond your understanding. And now the threshold widens, and a new reality will be swallowed up, he said. The experiments weren't unlocking any potential for humanity. This was always a trap, I realized. It took you long enough, Emma said, as strange, faceless beings strapped me down. What are you going to do to me? You don't belong here anymore. There are still other places where a harvest must take place. We can handle the workload here, and you will remain our puppet. I looked at the older man, a realization of who he was. You're Swain, the one that killed those students all those years ago, I said. Killed? Heavens, no. I awakened them to their full potential. They're here, part of the endless tapestry. This shared consciousness is a way for our species to live forever, James. What I've done is give them immortality, he cackled. Emma plunged the syringe in my neck. I will fight this. I will find a way to save you, I told her. And she looked sad. Her eyes told me she believed it was too late. The walls of flesh began to close in. I was drowning in their awful, and then coming up for air in the dark church. My hands were clammy and shaky as I walked away from the ritual circle. The Emma I knew was in the doorway, a bit perplexed by my strange behavior. Dr. Wesley, are you still trying to recruit us? She asked. No, sweet child. You must flee from here. Only devil's work is being done here. We have to get away, I told her. Emma didn't want to leave with me that evening, and it was the last chance I got to speak with her. I sent in my resignation to Ousset the following evening as I caught a train to Clear River. They didn't seem to hold a grudge, but instead pressed forward with their work to map and understand that labyrinth undeterred. I tried again to reach out to Emma, only to learn that she'd already decided to join the corporation. It feels like no matter what I've done, fate has found a way for the endless halls to grow. The doors to grow more numerous. Soon, I suspect that many others will find their way into those back rooms of the mind and become trapped there. Spread the warning and stop this madness as much as you can. Please. We might not be too late. At the very least, we might be able to be prepared for what comes next. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. How often do you stumble across something that you just have to tell somebody about? Maybe it's a great news song, or another video about cats, and babies finding the most ridiculous ways of getting along. Don't you spread the word to your friends, so you can all talk about something great. Well, I'm going to let you in on something I can't keep to myself. Wireless service for just $15 a month. That's right, $15 a month. What's the secret? Well, to be fair, it shouldn't be a secret because everyone should be talking about it. Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile wants to be the service you and your friends can't help but tell everyone about because they want to rescue you from ridiculous overages, expensive monthly payments, and hidden fees. That's scary. Yep, sign up for 3 months to start at $15 a month, and you get unlimited talk and text, as well as high-speed data on the largest 5G network in the country. Keep your phone, keep your contacts, keep your bills low. Let's face it, even if you tried to keep it to yourself, everyone will start to notice you more relaxed and a little more extra green in your pocket and want to know how you do it. Why hold back any longer? I can't recommend Mint Mobile enough. Make the switch. Join Mint Mobile today, and I can promise you, you won't be able to keep these deals to yourself. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, Go to mintmobile.com/dark. That's mintmobile.com/dark. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/dark. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. I hope you enjoyed Labyrinth of Stars by Kyle Harrison, as performed by yours truly. If you enjoyed that tale and would love to read more from tonight's very talented featured author, you can help support him by visiting simplyscarypodcast.com/Kyle-Harrison. That's simplyscarypodcast.com/KYLE-HARRISON. Thanks again for your support of this program and tonight's featured author. How many times has it been said, especially on this program, don't tamper in God's domain? Of course, it also helps to know which God that happens to be on any given universe. Waiting for medical attention sometimes seems like it takes forever. But as Ron Riekki shows us in our second story, perhaps the long wait has to do with something far more sinister than a doctor late from his golfing lunch. Without further ado, I present to you the VA Waiting Room. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. You're going to have a tough time because there's no one else around here, and I know you heard it. We sit there a bit. He's got an Army cap on, and I got an Air Force cap on. His says Group for Specialized Tactics. Mine says nothing, silent, just the Air Force insignia. The only way to heighten this would be if he was wearing a USMC cap, and I was wearing a Space Force ball cap. But that's not the case. He's pure Army, and I'm 100% Air Force. It's a VA waiting room. It's 3 a.m. I came at 3 a.m. because it has the least wait. Never come to a VA at 7 a.m. because you'll hit exchange or shift and you'll be there forever. Don't come during the day because it's even worse. And don't come at midnight. The drunks come in from then to about 2 a.m. Kid vets who want their stomachs pumped from too many Long Island iced teas or natty lights. He's enduring freedom on Desert Storm. Only vets who know what those mean with any sort of accuracy. I get asked about Afghanistan all the time. I was never in Afghanistan because that's the wrong war. A couple of times I've been asked, what was it like in Vietnam? That's 2 decades off, an entire generation. I hate talking with civilians about war. It's like when men talk about abortion. They don't have a clue. I'm here for hemorrhoids, which I'm not telling to an infantryman, the dog-face, the bullet catcher, the beetle, the cannonhead, the round pounder. I'm airman, airhead, Air Force. That's about it. Not a lot of nicknames for the Air Force. All I know is this guy in the Army hates me. When I know this, we had 3 Air Force guys get killed on my base, all in the line of duty. We had 2 Army guys die, and they were both by suicide. So I don't want to hear about how heroic the Army is, and how, whatever the Air Force is. Especially not at 3:05 a.m. in a VA waiting room where there's construction that's been going on, but currently isn't, because it doesn't smell like corpse in here. And there's no doctors around, no nurses, no nothing, just silence, except for his voice. We're on the same side. Air Force isn't on anybody's side. Air Force is ISIS. I look at the floor. It looks made out of boredom. A color of dirty white that makes me think of city snow. Something so gloomy and polluted about it. We sit there. The chairs even feel like boredom. Okay, you're not ISIS. We had 4 guys killed, I say. I upped the number. I don't know why I upped the number, except we did have 4 guys killed, but 3 when I was there, 1 before I got there, so that's 4. 1,400 of us get killed every year. What do you mean? That's the average. 1,400 on duty every year. That's how many military deaths we average. We? We. He puts out his fist. I bump it. I try to figure out his illness, his injury, maybe both. I'm guessing cancer. Something about him screams cancer. I'm even thinking throat cancer, something in his voice. Might just be old age, except he's in his 40s. 40s going on 60. I've gotten the VA letters sent to my home with the words, burn pits and toxic exposures and disability compensation in territorial water thereof, based on the PACT Act and the long list of glioblastoma and melanoma and scardiosis and granulomatous. Makes me hate Latin and English. That quick, we're buddies, and we sit there. Buddy's not speaking, because he's got whatever and I got hemorrhoids, and sickness makes you want to say nothing. Maybe make you moan like a ghost, but that's about it. Time goes by, 4 a.m. Nothingness. It's like we're in purgatory, or hell, or both. Or maybe some one-location horror film like Exam, or Cube, or Rope, or 1408. 4-letter words where people in the films are fed. I hate horror. I can't watch it, because it seems so fake. War makes horror seem like a rom-com. I remember watching a movie where a guy had his head blown off, and I remember thinking, this doesn't look like that. I haven't seen a lot of death, but enough. I was medical. We get everything. I remember when I got out, I took a job at a psych ward in a prison where they sent the most dangerous from all the other prisons in the state. It was in Florida. I thought I'd move to Florida for Disney and beach bunnies. I worked 60 hours a week in maximum security where we never saw the sun, day or night, especially night. I got out of there when we had a paramedic who got arrested for murder, and he came back as an inmate. I was worried that was going to be me. I saw it as a loop, a mad loop. I got out, moved north to Chicago, where I now work as an EMT. The hemorrhoids are from trying to go to the bathroom too fast. You don't get any breaks. Seriously, there's no time. You go from one patient to the next, to the next, to the next, all night long. So when you need to go, it has to be fast. The partner rapping on the door telling you to hurry up. I made so many mistakes with my life. Just one long, brutal, endless mistake, where I save people's lives daily and nobody cares. What are you thinking? Yeah, nothing. It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, I hear thunder. Is that what it was? I think they forgot about us. Happens. I don't even see anybody walking by. Go look. For what? A person. Go with me? You afraid? A bit. Seriously? These VA hospitals are haunted as hell. You know how many vets have died in these places? 1,400 a year. Come on. We go down the hall. It's all dust white. Dust is basically corpse. About a quarter to a half of all dust is dead skin cells. It's balls of corpse of your family, of you, balled up near your fridge, and that's what the walls of the halls look like. We can hear our footsteps. I look at this guy, this fellow vet walking with me peripherally, and I wonder if he's dead. When you look at the skin of a human body, that's all dead skin cells, too. The stratum corneum. It's all dead skin cells on our exterior. You don't know if someone is truly alive till you look at their eyes. And this guy is wearing sunglasses. Indoors. I thought to look cool, but now it's kind of scaring me. I want to ask him if he's a ghost, if he's dead, if he's haunting me. There's a scar across his chin, like his throat was slit. I wonder if it was from a previous surgery, a war wound. From jumping up and down on his bed as a kid, missing, falling, slipping, plummeting to the floor and landing on his jaw. Who knows? Scars so often look like letters. His looks like an eye. We get to the end of the hall. Nothing. Nothing in every room, which happens. They close off parts of the hospital. Certain parts they only have open during the day, certain machines that they need qualified staff who'd refuse to do night shift. We make our way back, and then we go down another hall. Was that thunder? Yeah. It wasn't raining when we got here. We've been here for hours. A couple, yeah. We go back to the waiting room. That's what the military was, honestly. Waiting. It's 99% of it. You just sit there and wait. I heard it's like that for cops, too. I know it's like that as an EMT when I was in Florida. In Chicago, we go non-stop, but in Florida, we'd have a whole shift where nothing happened. That's why I went into the prison. More pay, and I thought something would happen. What happened was inmates stabbing each other and stabbing themselves. That's how they'd get out of the prison for a bit, get taken to the hospital, where they hoped to at least hear TV in the other room. On Super Bowl Sunday, we'd have 5, 6, 7 guys stabbing themselves, trying to catch some of the game at the hospital. You had 4 guys die? Yeah. You saw it? No. Oh, so you didn't even see it. I did. I don't want to talk about it. I don't tell him this. I killed a guy, he says. You killed a guy? 1. Who? Guy coming on the base. Who? I don't know his name. Some jerk-off trying to come on the base. How'd you kill him? I shot him, of course. We sit back down in the same spot where we started from. I readjust my mask. Why are you wearing that? I'm not going to give you COVID. It's a VA hospital. These places aren't the cleanest. COVID's over, man. I don't usually wear it. Looks dumb. I worked in a prison during COVID and I never got it, and everybody got it in there. You worked in a prison? Yeah. Where? Central Florida. How central? I don't even know what that means. What city? Claremont. Don't know it. What's it again? Claremont. Was it some kind of clear mountain there? No. Figures. Town names, sir. Useless. What the hell does Chicago mean? No idea. I heard it means skunk. Seriously? I heard that. Smells like skunk. Hell, in here it smells like formaldehyde. It does stink in here. I'm about ready to leave. I'm worried there's no exit. What do you mean? Like we're trapped? We ain't trapped, it's just waiting. Waiting feels like being trapped. You ever kill anyone? Well, that's abrupt. You ever did? I thought, you're not supposed to ask that. You don't ask that to a vet. You never killed anyone. If I did, I don't want to talk about it. You're chair force. Chair force don't kill nobody. You ever heard of B-52s? We dropped 100,000 tons of bombs during Desert Storm. That's the Air Force doing that, not the Army. Don't get me started. On what? But you ain't never killed nobody, like actually know what it feels like. We sit there. I killed someone. I say, who? Someone. Who? Someone. Okay, who? Patient. What? A patient. You killed a patient. Why? How do you kill a patient? You a doctor or something? EMT. Where? Here. You killed a patient. Here. No. I don't get you. Florida. Oh, you killed someone in Florida? Yeah. Who? I told you, a patient. Like what? Tell me the story. At the prison. You killed a prisoner? Yeah. Like what? Stabbed him? No. What? I gave him the wrong medication. On purpose? No. Why do you do that? It was late. I was tired. It wasn't my job. It was the nurse's job. I just gave him the medication. The nurse killed him, actually, not me. Oh, don't change it up now. EMTs can't give meds. I thought you said you gave him the medication. I handed it to the patient. The nurse said, give it to him. So I took it and gave it to him, and it was the wrong medication. And it killed him? Yeah. You knew it was the wrong medication? I don't say anything. You knew. I can tell. You killed that guy. He was a vet, too. A vet? Doing life, but he was a vet. Doing life, but you took it. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Get it off your chest, just like I just did with you. Like I just told you. And we sit there. The guy I killed was on our side. What do you mean? The guy I shot was coming back on base. He was sneaking back on base. He went off base to drink and he came back and I shot him. Why? I thought he was the enemy. The thunder sounds like it's directly above us. Directly. Like it's trying to crack through the ceiling to get to us. He takes his glasses off. He's almost teary. He wipes his eyes and looks at me, and I see his face for the first time. It looks a lot like someone I recognize. I look harder. His face, it's a lot like the prisoner I was just telling him about. A lot. Maybe I'm imagining it. Take your mask off, he says. Why? Just take the goddamn mask off. I take the mask off. We stare at each other. He looks exactly like the prisoner. Exactly. Same eyes, same nose, same scar even. The prisoner had that same exact scar. He's studying me. He wipes sweat off of his forehead, but keeps looking at me, studying my face. And he sees something. It looks like his body is shivering. He recognizes something. He doesn't say it, but I know what he's thinking. I know it without him saying it. I look like the guy he shot. I know it. I can tell by the tear on his face. His eyes look like they're being forced as wide open as possible, as if ghosts are yanking his eyes wide open. His mouth stretches like other ghosts are pulling on that as well. Maybe that's what is happening. I can feel it happening to my eyes and mouth, too. My eyes screaming, my mouth yanked open in horror. And we two ghosts, are we haunting each other? But I'm an EMT in Chicago. I'm not a dead artilleryman. Unless I am. Unless this is the hell of purgatory, or the purgatory of hell, and not a VA waiting room. We sit there, and the ghosts of the dead from the history of this hospital all appear together at the same time, pouring in from the walls and hallways, tumbling in through the walls, their 1,000 absent bodies, and they're all in unison at yanking our faces apart now, and it feels like a bullet ripping through my skull over and over and over and over and over and over and again and again and again. I hope you enjoyed The VA Waiting Room by Ron Riekki, as performed by yours truly. If you enjoyed the tale and would love to read more from tonight's very talented featured author, you can help support him by visiting simplyscarypodcast.com/Ron-Riekki. That's simplyscarypodcast.com/RON-RIEKKI. Thanks again for your support of this program and tonight's featured author, as well as all of our authors who helped provide us with stories tonight. Now, before we go, I would also like to take a moment to thank you, personally, for joining me on this episode of Scary Stories Told in the Dark. If you enjoyed what you've heard on today's program, please take a moment to stop by our iTunes page, or wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review and a kind word. It makes a huge difference, and it would mean a lot to us. If you'd like to hear a premium extended edition of tonight's and all of our other episodes featuring twice the terror, visit simplyscarypodcast.com today and click the Patrons link in the menu at the top of the screen. You'll find yourself at chillingtalesfordarknights.com, where you can purchase season passes for this podcast and our other quality storytelling programs, or become a patron for as little as $5 a month and get access to our entire audio archive dating back to 2012, all of it ad-free. If you happen to use Facebook, Twitter, or X, Instagram, or YouTube, you can follow and subscribe to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights there, where you'll get all of our latest updates and new releases, and have the chance to interact with us each and every week. You can subscribe to me on YouTube as well at the Otis Jiry channel, where you'll find releases of my series, Horror Storytime, dating back to, 10 years, 2014. And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, or X, and Instagram too. Just search for Otis Jiry. Until next week, stay spooky and get some sleep, if you can. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Scary Stories Told in the Dark, a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcasts Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com today to learn more about our network and our other amazing storytelling programs. Tonight's program was hosted, and its featured stories performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry. Selected stories have been adapted with the kind permission of their respective authors. Original music provided by Luke Hodgkinson and Jesse Cornett. Sound design and final mixing and mastering provided by executive producer and director Craig Groshek. Program's artwork and logo by David Romero. If you're looking for some fresh tales on a daily basis while waiting for the next podcast, check out my YouTube channel, the Otis Jiry channel, and my extensive collection of narrated tales there. Simply search on YouTube by my name, and you'll find me. And don't forget to subscribe and press the bell notification icon to get my latest releases. Got a scary tale of your own that you'd like performed? I take submissions. Email it to me today at otis@simplyscarypodcast.com to have your terrifying tome considered for production in a future episode of this show. That's otis@simplyscarypodcast.com. If you've enjoyed what you heard on tonight's program and are joining us on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to us to be sure you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review and a comment. Your feedback means a lot to me. You can also follow Chilling Tales for Dark Nights and yours truly on Facebook to connect anytime and get the latest updates on this and other programs and my channel. If you're listening on the Chilling Tales for Dark Nights YouTube channel, do us a favor and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon for ctfdn as well to get more spooky tales from me and the crew and another episode of this program each and every Wednesday. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up button to tell us how we're doing and leave a kind word or a request. And don't forget to visit us at chillingtalesfordarknights.com and consider supporting the team by becoming a patron. In addition to helping us out, you'll get exclusive access to our audio archive and ad-free downloads of all your favorite stories, including those you've heard on this program. As for me, I'll be back next Wednesday with more terrifying tales to keep you up all night. But that's all right. Who needs sleep anyway?
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.